Behind every empire lies a secret waiting to explode. Julian Croft built one of the most luxurious hotel empires in the American West. To the public, he was untouchable, charismatic, influential, admired by everyone from politicians to celebrities. But empires rarely collapse from outside attacks. Most are destroyed from within. What Julian failed to realize was that the woman standing beside him knew every hidden room, every carefully buried secret, every crack behind the polished image. And on one unforgettable night in Las Vegas, Elara Vance chooses to expose everything in front of the city elite. This is not simply a tale of betrayal. It's a story about power, image, control, and the devastating consequences of underestimating the wrong woman.
Hey, if you believe revenge is a dish best served cold, then like and subscribe. Let's dive in. The Chicago skyline was a string of diamonds and the black velvet of Lake Michigan. But even that couldn't outshine the woman gliding through the lobby of the city's newest skyscraper. Ava Sterling's moved with the calm of a hurricane's eye, her couture dress a whisper of midnight silk. Every step was a tick of the clock, counting down to the explosion she was about to detonate. She'd orchestrated this whole launch event, crafting every moment like a master strategist. Because tonight, at the grand unveiling of the Sterling Tower, her husband, Liam Sterling's, had no idea she was even in the builds, did he? He thought Ava was the delicate, pregnant wife he'd left sobbing in their Gold Coast penthouse. The marketing genius completely shattered by his recent distance. But that woman no longer existed. Her pain had been forged into a blade. Tonight, Ava wasn't the casualty, she was the architect of his spectacular demise. The secret she was about to drop would send shockwaves through Chicago's high society. Because when a woman takes justice into her own hands, it's a showstopper. And Ava was here to collect on his debts with crushing interest. Chapter 1. The Grand Reveal. Lake Michigan was a sheet of dark glass, mirroring the city's ambition and power. From the corner office of her marketing firm, Ava Sterling surveyed the city she'd helped brand. The other towers were like rivals in a concrete jungle. Each light represented a fortune built on trade and logistics. Ava arrived 6 years ago as Ava Reed, a bold marketing director from L.A., whose campaigns rattled the city's most established ad agencies. Her talent for crafting viral brand stories caught the eye of Liam Sterling, the most celebrated architect in the Midwest. Liam didn't just design buildings, he created landmarks that redefined skylines from Toronto to Dallas. Their love story unfolded between charity galas and industry award nights. Ava remembered meeting him at an urban development summit, where her pitch for a new city branding campaign stunned the entire audience. He found her afterward, his custom suit hanging just right. His drive was a force of nature, and when he smiled, Ava felt the entire room disappear. "The marketing guru who thinks a city can have a soul," he murmured, his voice smooth and certain. "I had to meet the woman bold enough to sell that dream." Their wedding was the social event of the season. The Art Institute of Chicago shut its doors for their wedding, welcoming 1,000 guests from across the globe. Ava was a vision coming down the grand staircase, her dress a modern waterfall of silk. The main hall became an indoor garden of orchids and steel sculptures, with a cello trio playing softly. Liam waited for her, his eyes glistening, whispering, "My brilliant strategist," as she met him. An Illinois senator officiated beneath the famous Chagall windows. As they kissed, a silent burst of fireworks lit up Millennium Park, a spectacular start to their shared future. The first 3 years were a perfectly crafted, sun-drenched dream. Ava launched her own agency, Sterling Marketing, with a sleek office overlooking the Chicago River. She became legendary for rebranding stale corporations into exciting, modern powerhouses. Her styles blended sharp data with daring creative, reshaping Chicago's corporate identity. The penthouse they bought was their first joint venture. Liam designed it as a masterpiece of steel and glass, and Ava curated its story, choosing every piece of art and furniture to reflect their brand. Power and vision. Liam was the ideal husband in those days. He'd bring her first edition design books from his trips abroad. He planned whirlwind trips to Dubai and Tokyo and cheered for her at every awards ceremony as if the wins were his. They even launched a foundation together, Sterling Futures, to mentor young designers in the city. "You're my North Star, Ava," he would say on their balcony, watching the city below. "Before you, I just drew buildings. With you, we're building an empire." And Ava believed it. She invested everything into his vision. Her brilliant marketing campaigns had turned 3 of Liam's cold skyscrapers into iconic city landmarks. His flagship tower had a digital experience she designed, drawing in tourists, while another featured a rooftop bar that became the hottest spot downtown. Every project showcased her talent and her devotion to him. But infidelity often wears the mask of ambition. The first red flags were small. Liam started staying late, blaming last-minute blueprint changes. Our quiet evenings were interrupted by urgent calls from his construction foreman. Weekend getaways were scrapped because of sudden material shortages or zoning disputes. Ava, consumed by her most ambitious project, yet the Sterling Tower launch missed the warning signs in her own foundation. She had absolute faith in Liam, believing their bond was unbreakable. It was 6 months back, while organizing a surprise anniversary trip, that Ava discovered her perfect world was a blueprint for disaster. The trip was a secret getaway, a week in a secluded bungalow in Bali. Ava was scrolling through an architectural blog on her laptop, looking for design inspiration, when a picture of Liam caught her eye. It was from a design conference in Miami. He was with a woman she didn't know. Something about the photo felt wrong. A cold knot formed in her stomach. On instinct, she picked up her phone and hired a private investigator to look into her husband. 2 weeks later, she got an email. The subject line was chillingly simple. It just read, "Sterling file." Ava felt the oxygen leave the room as she clicked open the attachment. There was Liam, but not alone. A younger woman with fiery red hair was with him, in pictures snapped at his condo in Miami. A trip he claimed was for a solo architectural symposium just last month. This woman was obviously not a colleague. They were kissing on the terrace, her hand on his chest. They were sipping cocktails by the infinity pool. The entire world around Ava faded to black. The city sounds died. The light from the monitor burned. She was clicking through a gallery of her own devastation. The woman, Isabel, whispered something in his ear, and Liam threw his head back and laughed. A genuine, unguarded laugh Ava thought was reserved only for her. Then the final image. Isabel was holding up a martini, and on her wrist was a unique, custom-designed watch. A watch Ava recognized from the blueprints one Liam said he was commissioning for his father's retirement. Ava slammed the laptop shut. The crack echoed through the silent penthouse like a bone snapping. She didn't cry. She sat motionless as her world crumbled. When Liam came home that evening, she greeted him with a perfect smile. But her mind was already mapping out a campaign of destruction. That night, lying beside him, she listened to his steady breathing and began plotting his ruin. A marketing expert knows that to build a new brand, you first have to completely destroy the old one. The affair was a fact. So what was her next move? The answer: a public detonation. For 3 agonizing months, I lived a double life. Outwardly, I was Ava, the marketing world's darling, the radiant, pregnant wife and power partner. Inside, I was a strategist documenting the demolition of my own marriage. Our mornings became a masterclass in deception. Liam would rise before dawn to call his European offices while I reviewed brand analytics. We'd kiss goodbye, and his touch felt like poison. I was past suspicion. I had concrete evidence. It wasn't just a hidden phone or a new scent on his collar. It was the gaping flaws in his stories. The site visit in Denver when his Amex statement showed a 5-star hotel in Miami. I gathered this data like a forensic accountant. Her name was Isabel, and my confirmation came from a professional, a private eye I hired after seeing a single damning photo online. The detective, a quiet professional named Harris, met me in a minimalist cafe downtown. He had this look of calm pity, the kind you see on a doctor about to deliver bad news. "Mrs. Sterling," he began softly, "your husband is. Careful." I forced a brittle smile. "I'm aware. That's why you're here. What did you find?" He sighed deeply. "Ava, are you certain you want to do this here?" But my hand was already reaching for the slim file, not even trembling, as I slid it across the marble tabletop. I'd chosen the spot for its perfect view of his new tower. And there he was, Liam, in a glossy photo on an architecture blog. He wasn't alone, and they clearly weren't discussing building codes. Isabel. The caption named her a rising star in design. She was laughing, her head tilted back, while Liam watched her with a fire I thought was mine alone. My world didn't break. It sharpened into a weapon. My phone vibrated a calendar notification. Anniversary dinner. 8 p.m. The sick irony of it. The picture had frozen their perfect, secret world. Liam. The name tasted like betrayal. It was a client dinner. That's the story he sold me. But I could hear the lie in his voice. It's the tone a husband uses right before he tells you that you being crazy. An affair hidden behind a Wall Street expense account. But I already had proof. I'd seen it on a society blog. Julian, my husband, at a gala in Monaco he was supposed to be skipping. And on his arm was Chloe. She was 30, a ruthless art consultant who had conquered the auction houses of London and New York. She'd advised on the last major acquisition for my husband's hedge fund. She was stunning, of course, with the chilling confidence of a woman who always wins. She had a stare that could devalue a masterpiece and a smirk that could bankrupt a gallery. "Chloe, I think we should leave," Julian said, his voice strained as he tugged at his tie. "We'll reconnect on this next week." She picked up her portfolio with a slow, deliberate confidence, utterly unfazed. As she walked by me, she stopped, her gaze locking with mine. There was no shame, no apology, just a flicker of what looked like victory. "Amelia," she said, her voice as cold and smooth as marble, "I really am sorry you had to find out like this." And then she left, leaving behind him the smell of an obscenely expensive perfume and the sickening realization that she now held the keys to my husband's portfolio. Julian moved toward me, his hands raised as if I were a spooked horse. "Amelia? Listen to me, we need to talk. It's not what you think. It was just what, Julian?" My voice was so calm it was frightening, like it belonged to a stranger. "A quarterly bonus? A market correction? A brief escape from your gallery owner wife who is just too predictable." He started to speak, then stopped. I could see the gears turning in his eyes as he built his next lie. "It's complicated. The pressure at the fund has been insane. You're always so focused on your next exhibition." And there it was, the cheating, immediately followed by the sharp, familiar twist of the knife. It was all my fault. My work, my passion for discovering new artists, had now become the reason for my marriage's failure. I bent down to grab the catalog for my upcoming show, stepping around the shattered pieces of our life on the floor. When I met Julian's gaze again, my face was like stone. I was no longer the wife who managed his fragile ego. He had just created a whole new woman.
"When you get home tonight,"
I stated, my voice completely empty of any feeling. "My things will be gone." "Amelia, wait, don't be like this. We can fix this. It's over with her. We can try therapy. We can..." But I was already walking out the door, abandoning him with his worthless promises and the lingering scent of his consultant's perfume. That night, I didn't return to our penthouse on Park Avenue. I took a cab to a boutique hotel in Soho, whose lobby art I had curated years ago, Back when I was naive enough to believe in forever, I immediately got on the phone. First, my lawyer. Next, a forensic accountant. Finally, my brother in Chicago, who swore for a solid 5 minutes straight after I told him what Julian had done. The next few days proved the affair was just the beginning of a far bigger deception. My lawyer, Mark Sterling, a man famous for handling Manhattan's most brutal divorces, called me to his office. He spread a set of documents across his mahogany conference table that sucked all the air from my lungs. "Amelia," he began, tapping a thick file of bank records, "we have a major problem here. For years, I kept my gallery's finances totally separate, but shared joint accounts with Julian for our home and personal investments. At least, that's what I believed. Julian has been wiring huge sums from your joint accounts into a series of offshore holding companies," Mark said. "You never signed off on these, did you?" I just shook my head, a wave of nausea washing over me. Based on these statements, over the last 18 months, he has funneled over $7 million, and it gets much worse. Mark slid another binder toward me. It was full of loan applications I'd never seen, investment papers with my forged signature, and titles to Art 6 pieces I didn't know we'd acquired. "It appears your husband used your gallery's pristine credit rating to secure millions in high-risk art loans. And Amelia, nearly all of these acquisitions have since been declared fakes." The room started to spin. I held onto the chair as Mark laid out the full scale of Julian's financial betrayal. "How much?" I whispered. "How much debt are we talking about? If a judge rules these forgeries are valid, you are personally liable for nearly fully $12 million in debt you knew nothing about. $12 million. My personal savings were barely $1 million. My gallery, the equity in my art collection, might be worth $4 if I liquidated everything. Julian didn't just have an affair. He had deliberately destroyed my financial life. He used my name, my reputation, and my signature as his weapons. "What can I do?" I asked, the words barely coming out. "We fight him. We claim fraud, forgery, and we unleash hell." Mark took off his glasses, his tough expression softening for a moment. "But Amelia, Julian is a Wall Street predator with the most ruthless lawyers in New York. He has the money to drag this on until you have nothing left." That night, in my hotel room, I poured a glass of wine and stared out at the indifferent lights of the Manhattan skyline. The city where I had built my dream career now felt like a prison. My phone buzzed. Julian. He'd been calling constantly. This time, I answered. "Amelia, thank God. We need to talk. Please, just come home." "I don't have a home anymore, Julian," I said, my voice flat and cold. "You leveraged it against a worthless painting without telling me." There was a long pause. Then, Julian's tone changed, becoming sharp and calculated. "Amelia, I get that you're upset, but let's not make this messier than it needs to be. We can sort this out." "Sort what out? The affair? The $12 million in secret debt? The fact you forged my name on legal documents?" "Listen," Julian snapped, his voice now the one he used to tariff junior analysts. "You have a choice. We settle quietly. You take the scraps, and you disappear. Or you fight me. And I swear to you, Amelia, you will leave this with absolutely nothing. That's not a threat. It's a statement of fact. You don't get how this city works. You don't have my kind of money, my board of directors, or my contacts. If you come after me, I will ruin your career. I will make sure your gallery is blackballed by every major collector in New York. Your name will be poison. You won't be able to sell a sketch." I squeezed my eyes shut. From a rooftop bar nearby, I could hear music and laughter, a bitter soundtrack to my life collapsing. "Oh, and one more thing," Julian said. "Chloe's pregnant." The words hit me like a punch to the gut. I bent over, the phone slipping from my fingers as the sobs I'd held back finally broke free in a raw, ragged wave. Julian's voice continued, a tiny metallic drone from the phone on the floor. "We're getting married as soon as the divorce is final. Honestly, it's better this way. Amelia, we've been growing apart for years. We just refuse to see it. Chloe, she understands my world. She makes me feel powerful again. I snatched the phone, my entire body shaking with a white-hot fury. Amelia, are you there? Yes, I whispered, my voice completely shattered. Good, let's be smart about this. I wiped away my tears, stood up straight, and looked at my own reflection in the dark window. Julian, I said, my voice suddenly like a shard of glass. Go to hell, and I hung up. If you want to watch Amelia rise from the ashes of this betrayal, make sure you subscribe. Her war for her future is just beginning. Chapter 2. The Freefall. The next few months were the lowest point of Amelia's 38 years. She found a small walk-up in Brooklyn, a place that cost less than their old monthly parking spot, but it was all she could afford with her accounts frozen. The apartment was one room, a tiny kitchen with barely enough space for a toaster and a view of a brick wall. No doorman, no skyline views, no designer furniture, but it offered one thing the penthouse never could. It was hers. Mornings started with bitter coffee and sifting through mountains of legal notices from Mark. Her afternoons became a humiliating routine of calls from artists pausing commissions, collectors backing out of sales, and creditors demanding money she didn't have. At night, the glare of the city and the rumble of the subway felt like an assault. Amelia hadn't just lost a husband. Her entire professional identity was being dismantled. Rumors of her financial ruin spread like a virus through the incestuous New York art world. In a business built on prestige, a nasty rumor is a death sentence. The career-making retrospective she was curating for a new artist was canceled after its main benefactor withdrew funding. Piece by piece, a decade of our shared dreams was being systematically destroyed. But the nights were the absolute worst. Alone in that cramped apartment, with just the endless noise of the city, Amelia was attacked by the memories she spent her days trying to escape. The photo from the Society blog played on a loop in her mind. The way Julian had lied about the charge for a Cartier bracelet, the way Chloe was draped all over him, a trip he'd called a bored retreat in St. Bart's. They had become a real couple, not just some cheap affair. For how long? They were probably laughing at her while she was busy building the life he was stealing. They laughed at her late nights coding their future, while they were coding their own little secret. The thoughts were poison, eating away at her. Amelia stared into the mirror, trying to see what Julian saw in Chloe that he couldn't see in her anymore. Was it her age? Amelia was 35. Chloe was just a kid, an intern in her 20s. Was it because Amelia was his equal, a co-founder with a mind of her own? Chloe was a yes woman, or maybe, and this was the cruelest thought, Julian was right. Maybe she'd gotten so lost building their startup, she forgot to be the woman he married. Was it her fault? That's the question that wakes you up at 3 a.m., the one that tells you that you built your own prison. Amelia started drinking bourbon, not to enjoy it, but to numb the pain. One drink turned into two, then a whole bottle, just to look at the separation agreement. It felt like an obituary. She stopped wearing the sharp blazers. The designer heals the very armor of her success. Now she just lived in an old university sweatshirt, looking less like a tech visionary and more like a ghost in a life she no longer recognized. Her sister Sophia called every single night from Seattle, her voice split between fury at Julian and worry for Amelia. "Just fly home," Sophia pleaded. "We can figure this out. You can start over here." But going home felt like surrender. Amelia came to San Francisco to build an empire. Going back meant the woman who changed the tech world was returning a complete failure. Amelia paused. If you've ever had your entire life implode in a single moment, tell me about it in the comments. We can all heal together. Her reality check didn't come from a conversation, but from a social media post. She was mindlessly scrolling through her feed when a tech influencer's story popped up. Her hands started to tremble as she tapped on it. And there it was, Silicon Valley's newest power couple, the caption read. A photo of Julian and Chloe. A picture of his hand on her very pregnant belly, both of them beaming. Amelia couldn't breathe, the phone screen a blur of tears. Her heart pounded as she scrolled down to the comments, past the hundreds of congratulations. Then a name made her stomach drop. Mark and Jessica. Their comment was right at the top, overflowing with heart emojis. Mark and Jessica. Julian's best friend and her maid of honor. The couple who were at their house every weekend, the people Amelia thought of as her family. But here they were, cheering on Julian's new life like Amelia had been completely erased. She's read Jessica's comment. I can't wait to be the best godmother ever. Godmother. The word was a punch to the gut. Jessica, who cried giving a toast at her wedding, was going to be godmother to this baby. So thrilled you'll be part of it, Julian had replied. It's amazing how life works out. I never knew I could feel this complete, as if their marriage had left him broken. Someone should check on Amelia, another comment said. Let's only look forward, Julian wrote back. This baby is everything. Amelia dropped her phone, the screen shattering on the hardwood floor. She sank down against the wall, silent tears streaming down her face. She thought the affair was the bottom. She thought losing the company was the worst of it. But this was a new kind of pain. This was realizing she wasn't just being replaced. She was being publicly erased, like their entire life together had been a failed beta test. She finally got to her feet, picking up the broken phone and seeing her own fractured reflection. That night, with a glass of cheap whiskey, Amelia knew who to call. She dialed her sister. Sophia, she said, her voice shaking. Ames, what is it? What's wrong? I saw the post, the influencer, the baby. Silence on the other end. Sophia understood. So, how are you? Amelia thought about it. Broken? Absolutely. Humiliated? Without a doubt. But under all that pain, a tiny spark was catching fire. Angry, she said. I am just so unbelievably angry. Good, Sophia replied, her voice sharp as steel. It's about time. Sophia, I need you here, in San Francisco. When? Tonight. Get on the next flight. What's the plan? What are we doing? Amelia walked to her window, looking out at the city skyline she helped build. We are going to burn his whole world to the ground, Amelia said. A cold fire spreading through her. We're going to take back everything. And he is going to wish he never knew my name. Sophia let out a short, brutal laugh. Their grandmother was a union organizer. Their mother turned a single coffee cart into a citywide franchise. The women in their family didn't just survive, they fought. That's the sister I know, Sophia said. So, what's our first move? A slow, dangerous smile crept across Amelia's face. Bring your laptop, some burner phones, and get ready for a fight. 3 days later, Sophia arrived, a general ready for battle. She had one bag, a briefcase with $50,000 in cash, and a plan she'd already drafted on the flight over. All right, first step, Sophia said, plugging her laptop in on the huge kitchen island. We need intel, all of it. On Julian, on Chloe, on his network of shell corporations, real books he hides from his board. And how do we get that? Amelia asked. Sophia's smile was sharp, mirroring Amelia's new determination. I know a guy, a white hat hacker. He's a ghost in the machine who finds hidden digital assets, and he owes me a massive favor. Less than a week later, an encrypted file arrived. It held terabytes of data. Everything was there, hidden crypto wallets, offshore servers, proof the affair started years ago. Then they found the weapon, concrete evidence Julian forged Amelia's digital signature on investment documents for 2 years, diluting her share. Ames, Sophia whispered. This is security fraud. He could do hard time for this. Prison is too easy, Amelia said, a strange light in her eyes. I want something much worse. I want poetic justice. If you think Amelia's about to turn the tables, smash that like button, because her revenge is just beginning. A couple weeks later, Amelia walked into her lawyer's office, a completely new woman. Her hair was sleek, her makeup flawless, and her suit screamed authority. "Mr. Chen," she said, putting a small encrypted drive on his desk. "I'm canceling the divorce proceedings." Her lawyer was speechless. "Amelia, why? This drive could destroy him in court. We can take everything he has." "Exactly," Amelia said with a chilling smile. "But this won't be settled in a courtroom. We're playing this game my way." The new Amelia had been born. 6 months after her life fell apart, she was ready to return to Silicon Valley's inner circle. Only this time, she was no longer the victim. First, she needed a consenter. Sophia pulled some strings and found a raw, industrial loft in the Mission District. This wasn't the sterile penthouse she shared with Julian. This was a war room, the perfect place to stage a comeback. The loft was a former warehouse, with massive ceilings and huge windows overlooking the city. Amelia made it her home, her office, her new headquarters. Sophia furnished it with pieces that were minimalist, sharp, and radiated lethal confidence. But the space wasn't her only upgrade. Amelia hired a team, a trainer, a new stylist, a publicist. The point wasn't just to look good. It was about building an armor of absolute confidence, the kind you forge by walking through fire and surviving. Her hair was now cut in a sharp, asymmetrical bob that framed her face. Her new wardrobe was sleek, understated, and projected a kind of power that didn't need to shout. But the real change was inside. Amelia spent months dissecting Julian's company. She learned every board member, every venture capitalist, every contact he had. She dug into his financials, his vulnerabilities, and his darkest secrets. Like a chess master, she mapped his entire game. And that's how she found the one fatal flaw in his strategy. It turned out Julian wasn't the tech visionary everyone believed he was. His entire company was a house of cards, propped up by a mountain of secret debt and shady fundraising rounds. It only looked successful because he kept acquiring smaller startups. I learned his entire business relied on securing one massive government contract to survive. It was a new $2 billion citywide network initiative, the biggest tech project in San Francisco's history, and Julian had to get it. And I had the one thing that could bring him down. For 4 years, I'd poured everything into Project Chimera, a revolutionary new AI platform that would redefine data security. I'd kept it secret from Julian, a surprise for our future. The irony was sickening. The very code I wrote to secure our future was now the weapon I'd use to destroy his. In 2 months, I perfected the platform, called in every favor, and launched a new company from nothing. My old life was gone. In its place stood Monroe Design Collective, with my former mentor Lena as my partner and a team of brilliant young architects. That name was a vow. I was rising from the ashes to build my own empire. My comeback was set for the annual Porto Vela Real Estate Summit at the Grand Vela Ballroom, the same place my world had imploded 6 months earlier. It was the perfect stage, packed with every industry heavyweight, to declare I was officially back in business. I arrived at 8 p.m. sharp, late enough for an entrance. Not so late I looked desperate. I wore a show-stopping crimson gown I'd designed myself, and it moved like liquid fire under the lights. The effect was immediate. A wave of silence followed me through the room as I greeted old colleagues as if I were just returning from a long vacation. Everyone who recalled Julian Vance's quiet, docile self saw the truth in a flash. This wasn't some broken woman. This was a woman who'd finally claimed her own power. I had found myself again. "Ava Monroe," said Councilman Davies, the city's planning commission head, doing an actual double take. "I'm stunned to see you. I heard you went back to New York. Leave Porto Vela?" My smile could have cut diamonds. Darlis, This is my city. I'd never abandon it. Not when things are about to get so very interesting. I didn't need to say Julian's name. His betrayal hung in the air. At 8:45, just as I'd planned, Julian walked in with Isabella. Naturally. She was now 7 months pregnant, clutching his arm like a brand new prize. I watched them from across the ballroom. For a fleeting second, I felt that old, familiar pain. Then I breathed in, squared my shoulders, and an ice-cold focus took hold. It was time. Julian finally saw me about 10 minutes later, holding court with investors and sharing a laugh with Arthur Finch, the city's toughest architectural critic. When Julian's eyes finally found mine, I held his gaze across the crowded room and gave him a slow, deliberate smile, the kind a predator gives its quarry, not a broken wife. It was a smile that said we were now rivals, and that I was completely over him. Julian froze, his champagne glass stopping halfway to his mouth. I saw the shock on his face, the total confusion, and then that first delicious hint of fear. This wasn't the woman he had wrecked. This was someone new. I excused myself and started walking toward the balcony, my path taking me directly past Julian and Isabella. Just as I was about to pass, I stopped, feigning surprise as if I'd only just then noticed them. Julian, I said, my voice pure honey. Isabella, what a wonderful surprise. Isabella physically recoiled, her hand instinctively protecting her pregnant belly. Julian's mouth opened and closed, but no sound came out. Ava, I didn't think you'd be here. Really? Why ever not? I cocked my head, my face a perfect mask of innocence. This summit has always been vital for my career. Speaking of which, Isabella, congratulations on the baby. You look absolutely radiant. The move was flawless. Congratulating her with such grace diffused the drama and proved I was the one who'd already won. Isabella could only manage a quiet, tight thank you. Well, I said, my voice light and airy, I won't keep you two. Julian, I trust you're well. I hope you're both very, very happy. With that, I glided by, leaving a trail of expensive perfume and the unshakable feeling that the power dynamic had just shifted for good. I didn't speak to them again, but I felt Julian's eyes on me all night. He was scared. He was confused. And that's exactly how I wanted him. Chapter 6. The Blueprint. 2 weeks later, it was time for the next phase. The deadline for the Sterling Key development bid was only 6 weeks away. I knew Julian had poured every last cent his firm had into his own proposal. I also knew, thanks to a very good private investigator, that this one project was the only thing keeping his entire company afloat. I arranged a meeting with Eleanor Sterling, the matriarch of the family trust that was financing the entire development and the only person whose opinion truly mattered. Eleanor had loved my early designs and always treated me with respect, even during the ugly divorce. Eleanor, I started in her gorgeous Bayside office. I have a proposal that will change this city's skyline forever. For the next hour, I laid out my complete vision for Project Elysian. It wasn't just another block of luxury condos. It was a fully self-sufficient community, combining stunning design with next-level green technology. Bioluminescent footpaths, living seawalls to heal the coastline, and a zero-waste infrastructure that would set a new global standard. It's ambitious, Eleanor said when I finished my pitch. Extremely ambitious. Do you even have the capital to pull this off? I have something better than capital, Eleanor. I have conviction and a team that believes in this. This isn't just another project for me. This is my legacy for Porto Vella, the city that gave me so much and taught me that sometimes you have to burn it all down to build something new. Eleanor leaned forward, her eyes bright with real excitement. Ava, this could revolutionize coastal development, but the price tag will be astronomical. I've been planning this for 4 years. I replied without hesitation. I have sovereign wealth funds from the Middle East, tech partners from Seattle, and exclusive contracts for materials no one else in this state can get. I can deliver this, Eleanor, and I can do it in a way that makes this project famous for more than just its views. When I left Sterling Tower that afternoon, I felt something that had been gone for months. Real hope. Not the thin hope of a survivor, but the fierce hope of a creator who had found her purpose again. The real test, though, came a week later. I was in my office putting the final touches on the bid when my phone rang. The napalm on the screen made me grin. Julian. I had been waiting for his call. Hello, Julian. My voice was as cool and calm as it had been at the summit. Ava, we need to talk. Oh? About what? A tense silence hung between us. I could almost hear him grinding his teeth. You know what about? I heard you put in a proposal for the Sterling Key project. And Ava. Julian's voice dropped to that low, manipulative tone he always used to get his way. Darling, I know you're hurting. I know I ruined everything, but this is just petty revenge. That development, I have poured 2 years of my life into it. My whole company is riding us this single deal. A stunning, ice-cold clarity washed over me. This was the moment I had been working towards. Are you asking me to withdraw my bid? I asked, my voice the picture of professional interest. I'm asking you to be smart. I can make this right. I'll send other projects your way. I'll make sure you're taken care of. We could even be partners on this one. I laughed, a short, sharp sound that held zero warmth. Julian, you know the real difference between you and me? You build things so you can own them. I build things because they deserve to be built. And Porto Vella deserves a landmark born from a vision, not from simple greed. Ava, please. Good luck with your proposal, Julian. May the best design win. And I hung up the phone. Chapter 7. The Groundbreaking. The main hall of the Porto Vella Art Museum had never been the stage for such a spectacular comeback. The same woman who just 6 months ago had fled the city in total disgrace now stood at the podium like a queen taking back her throne. It was the night of the annual City Founders Ball, the biggest social event of the year, and Ava Monroe had arrived not as the rejected wife of Julian Vance, but as the celebrated CEO of Monroe Design Collective. 3 days before, the Sterling Trust has announced my firm had won the Sterling Key contract. Losing that massive contract didn't just tarnish Julian's reputation, it revealed the deep financials rot inside his company. The internal audit that followed the news uncovered the shocking extent of his lies. The leaked texts about his affair were just the start. For years, Julian had been cooking the books and lying to his lenders. Without the Sterling Key deal, which he'd used to secure all his recent financing, his entire development empire was on the verge of total collapse. Federal investigators were already raiding Julian Vance's offices downtown this morning. He was facing serious charges for wire fraud, bank fraud, and conspiracy. His credit lines were frozen, his personal assets were seized, and his golden boy reputation was completely shattered. But Ava hadn't come to the Founders Ball to gloat over her ex-husband's ruin. She came to prove that a woman could walk away from a disaster and build something stronger, more beautiful, and more powerful than ever. Her suit, a sharp white custom design, was a statement of her own success. The fabric seemed to drink the stage lights, casting a soft, powerful glow as Ava moved. Her hair was styled in a chic bob, revealing diamond studs, a gift to herself that glittered with quiet fire. But her most stunning feature was the absolute calm she now wore like armor. For months, Ava had carefully rebuilt her life, not just her career in architecture, but her very soul. She fought her way back, embraced her own relentless ambition, and learned to define herself not as Julian S. wife, but as Ava Monroe. That voice made her look up. It was David Chen, San Francisco's most sought-after venture capitalist, striding toward her with a look of pure admiration. Evelyn. She extended a hand, and his grip was firm. "It's an honor to meet you, sir." The honor is mine, Evelyn. Your keynote on algorithmic accountability was a masterpiece. In 20 years in tech, I've never seen anyone map out the future with such moral clarity. Thank you, Evelyn said, feeling a familiar fire for her work reignite. This is my life's passion. Building a future where our innovations serve people, not just profit margins. For the rest of the reception, Evelyn was the gravitational center of the room. AI startup founders, big tech executives, and rival ethicists all wanted a piece of her time. They praised her insights, asked about her new consulting firm, and pitched potential collaborations. It was as if the entire industry was finally seeing the powerhouse who'd been there all along, hidden in the shadow of her marriage to Julian. Evelyn, I cited your work for years, said a legendary computer scientist. I always said you were the true genius. Your new firm is going to rewrite the rules. This is only the beginning, Evelyn replied, a confident smile touching her lips, hinting at the revolution she was about to start. I'm launching a new framework for ethical AI auditing over the next 18 months. We're going to prove that technology can have a soul. And that's when she saw them enter. Julian and Isabella walked into the summit like ghosts from a past life. Julian wore his trademark designer hoodie, but it seemed to swallow him, like the scandal had physically taken a piece of him. His eyes were hollow, and his famous charming smirk was a brittle, desperate imitation. Isabella, now very pregnant, held onto Julian's arm as if he were her last hope. Her couture maternity gown couldn't hide the sheer terror in her eyes. The story of his company's collapse was the talk of the valley, and the failure was visibly crushing them. A bizarre sense of calm washed over Evelyn. For months, she had played this exact moment out in her mind in 100 different ways, but standing here now, she felt none of the righteous anger she had expected. There was no pleasure in seeing Julian look so defeated, no victory in Isabella's obvious fear. Instead, she felt a strong, liberating wave of complete indifference. Julian saw her. Their eyes met across the crowded hall, and she could read his entire story in that one look. Regret, panic, and a flicker of something she hadn't seen in years. He began moving in her direction. Evelyn politely excused herself and walked to the floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the Bay Bridge. She wasn't fleeing from him, but she wasn't waiting for him either. She was simply owning her space, projecting a quiet, unbreakable confidence. Evelyn. Julian's voice was raspy, as if he'd been shouting for days. Evelyn turned to him, her expression the cool, polite mask she had perfected over the last year. "Julian," she said, her tone flat. He just stood there, completely adrift, struggling to find the right words. The quiet hum of the summit filled the space between them. The city lights sparkling across the water, a stunning backdrop for this ugly reunion. "You look." Julian paused, swallowing hard, and tried again. "You look incredible. Transformed. More like the woman I remember than I've seen in a very long time." Evelyn tilted her head, watching him with the detached curiosity of a researcher observing a failed program. "And who was that, Julian? Brilliant," he confessed, his voice a raw whisper. "Unstoppable, like the woman I fell in love with before I ruined everything." A small, cold smile touched Evelyn's lips. It was a smile of pure, earned vindication. "It's funny," Evelyn said, her voice quiet but as sharp as code. "It took you cheating on me, committing data fraud, and becoming a pariah in this industry for me to finally see who I am when I'm not cleaning up your messes." Julian flinched as if her words were a physical blow. "Evelyn, I know I failed. What I did was unforgivable. I was so arrogant. I was a coward. I destroyed the only real thing in my life." "Yes," Evelyn agreed, with a chilling serenity. "You did." The silence that hung between them was deafening, while other attendees laughed and networked nearby, completely unaware of the demolition taking place in their midst. Is there any way Julian started, but Evelyn held up a hand, stopping him cold. No, she said, her voice absolute. You don't even know what I was going to ask. Evelyn smiled, and for the first time it was real, full of a pity that was more devastating than any anger could be. You were going to ask if there was a chance for us, some way to fix this, some way to undo all the damage. Julian could only nod, his face a mask of total devastation. And the answer is no, Evelyn continued. Not because I hate you, Julian, and not because I want to see you suffer. It's because the woman you destroyed is gone. She disappeared the night I saw those encrypted messages on your phone. And the woman standing here tonight deserves so much more than the apologies of a man who only learns to value something once he has already lost it forever. At that moment, as if on cue, David Chen appeared at her side. Evelyn, David said, his eyes glazing over Julian as if he wasn't even there. The panel on AI governance is about to start. Shall we find our seats? Evelyn gave David a warm, genuine smile. I would love that. She took David's offered arm and let him lead her away from Julian, not once looking back as they headed toward the front row. The contrast was poetic. Evelyn was walking with a man who respected her mind, who championed her vision, who saw her as a peer while Julian was left behind, watching her go. She could see him over her shoulder, a stationary figure in the moving crowd, an island failure or a sea of innovation. Isabella had reached him, her face etched with anxiety, but he didn't seem to see her. His eyes were locked on Evelyn, following her with the haunted expression of a man just now understanding the true price of his betrayal. Are you all right? David asked softly as they took their seats. I'm perfect, Evelyn answered, and was stunned by how true that was. For the first time in what feels like a lifetime, I am exactly where I'm supposed to be. The panel moderator tapped the microphone, and the large hall grew quiet, and in that instant the entire evening shattered. From across the auditorium, Evelyn heard a sharp, desperate cry. She turned just in time to see Isabella collapsing, one hand clutching her stomach, the other gripping Julian's arm to stay upright. A dark stain was spreading on the light gray carpet where she stood. Help! Julian screamed, his voice breaking with a raw animal terror. Somebody please get a doctor. The baby is coming. The tech summit immediately dissolved into chaos. People rushed forward, some trying to help, others just staring at the very public meltdown. Someone shouted to call 911. The moderator was silent, leaving a ringing void filled by panicked yelling and Isabella's chained sobs. Evelyn sat frozen in her seat, watching the disaster unfold like a system crash in slow motion. The man who broke her life, now terrified, holding the woman who helped him do it. I watched the two of them face a crisis that exposed them completely, and I felt nothing at all. No satisfaction in their pain, no urge to help, no lingering need for revenge. Just a deep, profound calm, the kind of peace that comes when you finally delete a corrupted file for good. My colleague David looked at me, his expression full of concern. Should we do something? I watched as security rushed in, as Julian shouted denials, as Isabella was helped out of the room. I saw the primal fear in their eyes. I saw the toxic codependence that bound them in that moment of ruin, and how they clung to each other as their world came crashing down. No, I said at last. They have each other, and that's all they deserve. Just before vanishing through the exit, Julian looked back one last time, his eyes searching for me. Our gazes locked across the chaotic room, and in his expression, I saw one final question. A last, desperate appeal for something I no longer had to give. I offered him a small, deliberate nod. It wasn't forgiveness. It was a closing statement. A final acknowledgement that what we had was once real. A final acknowledgement that our partnership meant something, even though he was the one who destroyed it. A final acknowledgement that it was over, and we both had to live with that. And then he was gone, and I was at the biggest tech summit in the world with my entire industry watching. And my future was right there in front of me, a clean slate waiting for a new code. Well, David said after a long moment, I let out a deep, genuine laugh that felt like a system reboot. You know what, David? I'm done with personal drama. I've had enough of it for one lifetime. Let's talk about something that actually matters, like building a future with responsible AI. The moderator's face broke into a relieved smile. Now that is a conversation worth having. And as the panel got back on track, I, Evelyn Reed, spoke with a new fire in my voice, outlining my vision for a better kind of technology. I described systems that could heal our world, a future that could redefine what progress truly means for humanity, of a design firm that put blueprints before billionaires. I was sketching my future, the final draft. My story didn't end that day I found his affair. It began 6 months later, on the rooftop of my own boutique hotel, watching my team install the final fixtures. The building I'd once designed for my husband's empire was now my masterpiece. It was concrete and steel-proof that a woman could build her own legacy on unshakable foundations. Any woman who has felt that kind of heartbreak knows this to her core. You don't get over betrayal by running back to the man who lied. You heal when you finally see you're more brilliant, more driven, and more capable than you ever let on while you were making yourself small to fit into his life. A life that was never big enough for your vision anyway. I never spoke to Julian again. I heard the rumors. Of course, Miami's property scene is a small, gossipy world. He was facing lawsuits for stealing designs. That his new partner, Simone, had fled back to Brazil with their seed money. He lost everything. The firm, the penthouse on the water, his reputation, and I just felt this strange sense of peace. Gratitude for him for being a locked door in my past. His greed had handed me the keys to a life that truly fit. Gratitude, because his deception taught me I could weather any hurricane that came my way. And gratitude, because by shattering my trust, he forced me to find a power that was never tied to his name. For any woman watching this, your story isn't finished just because he wrote you out of it. It starts the moment you decide to design a final chapter that is all yours. Subscribe to our channel for more stories of women who built empires from the wreckage, who turned heartbreak into high rises, and who proved that sometimes losing it all is the only way to build the life you were meant to have. In Miami, a city built on ambition, Isabella Rivas proved the greatest project a woman can ever build is herself.